Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from a home equity line of credit to avoid any money being traced back to him that could negatively impact his campaign. And I did that too, without bothering to consider whether that was improper, much less whether it was the right thing to do or how would it impact me, my family, or the public. And I am going to jail in part because of my decision to help Mr. Trump hide that payment from the American people before they voted a few days later.
That is the Michael Cohen who showed up in court today. Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York on a day that has not turned out the way anyone thought it would 12 hours ago. It's been a day about consequences, specifically the consequences for the ex-president's incredibly loyal former fixer. They were on full display before the jury, ones like going to prison that Trump so far has eluded. In the last hour, today's court session came to a close, ending with Michael Cohen's bumpy cross-examination by Trump lawyer Todd Blanche. We expect that to pick up on Thursday with Blanche at the helm when court resumes. Blanche's was a line of questioning that started out hot, as our friend Lachlan Cartwright just described it, and confrontational, but never really landed, sort of like an awkward comedy skit, never setting up any sort of cohesive narrative, never landing two blows in a row, getting objected to over and over again. Todd Blanche questioned Michael Cohen about comments he made on social media, about lies Cohen admitted to under direct examination, about Cohen's past affection and devotion to Donald Trump, to which Cohen responded, quote, "At that time, I was knee-deep into the cult of Donald Trump, yes." But all that drama following the direct examination by the prosecution earlier today, where the drama really happened, Cohen was able to establish Trump being at the center of the paper and the reimbursements that he received for 12 months after paying Stormy Daniels $130,000 to keep quiet about her sexual encounter with Donald Trump a decade prior, ahead of the 2016 election. Cohen places his ex-boss directly at the scene of the crime, or in this case, as the guy directing the crime. The lawyer for the prosecution, Susan Hoffinger, again asking Cohen to state why he paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels, to which Michael Cohen replies, quote, "to ensure that the story would not come out, would not affect Mr. Trump's chances of becoming president of the United States." The prosecutor then asked at whose direction Michael Cohen paid Stormy Daniels. Trump's, Michael Cohen replies, which brings us back to the idea, the notion of consequences. Michael Cohen would eventually plead guilty and go to prison for, by his own description, putting loyalty to Donald Trump over the law. He faced a penalty for the crimes he committed for Donald Trump. Soon a jury will decide if Cohen's ex-boss should face any consequences as well. That's where we start the hour. Some of our most favorite reporters and friends outside the courthouse for us once again. NBC News correspondent Yasmin Vesuvian is back. Lucky for us, a full table. Former U.S. Attorney, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman's back. He was in the courtroom today. MSNBC legal analyst and NYU Law Professor Melissa Murray is back. And former executive editor with American Media Inc., special correspondent for The Hollywood Reporter, Lachlan Cartwright, who was also in court today, is back. Lachlan, I quoted you already. Tell me about, let's start with the cross, because that's what was happening until about 35 minutes ago. Tell me how this sort of bombed.
It did bomb. Todd Blanche kind of came in, as I said to you, hot, and he kind of had this full frontal attack about, you know, some things that Michael Cohen had put up on TikTok, and you were like, okay, this is the all-aggressive, you know, machine gun approach that Donald Trump would want, and then that just kind of went away, and then we were kind of left with this Mirandering type of dance where they were trying to suggest that Michael Cohen had gone rogue because the DA had instructed him not to comment in the media about the case and not to, you know, put anything out there. And it was almost like they were trying to set that up as a premise for, you know, him going rogue with Donald Trump. And then there was almost like this other sort of side conversation.
Oh, I didn't even track that. So they're saying they were trying to establish that he didn't do what he was told to do?
That was my kind of read on it. It was like, oh, you know, Michael Cohen went rogue because, you know, the DA told him to do this thing and he couldn't follow instructions. Well, here, you know, he's going rogue over here with Donald Trump and these payments and these you know, agreements. The other thing that I kind of found interesting that I thought they were trying to set up here was that, he was obsessed with Donald Trump, that he had this kind of, obsession and was jilted by Trump, and therefore he's out for revenge. Both lines just didn't hit. I was confused, and look, I do get confused easily, but the jury was more puzzled than I think anyone by it.
Yeah, the Times blog has the jury yawning and looking. I think David Kelly used the elegant word unmoved. Yeah. I want to ask you, again, it doesn't matter what they were trying to do, because I think the reporting is now in. It didn't land. What is your sense of what has been squandered? I mean, Todd Blanche will, I'm sure, regroup, he'll practice, and he'll have another chance. But when a cross of the star witness doesn't land, how much have you lost with the jury?
The first 45 minutes of this cross-examination were, and you could have said this 2 months ago, the single most important block of time in the entire trial for them.
Wow.
And they could have come on and, I think the exact word long is meandered. So he was inconsistent. He seemed to be kind of groping at one topic and then going to another. He did get interrupted with many objections, each of which broke his rhythm. And when you play, he had scored a couple points. There was one time where Cohen quibbled a little on the difference between saying something inaccurate and lying, and he pushed him to the wall, as he should. But when you put it against this being the opportunity cost of this exact examination and the beginning of this examination, what they've lost is incalculable.
I thought the prosecution landed on, in some ways, the dirtiest version of Michael Cohen in his own words. Yes, I committed crimes. Yes, I lied. Yeah, and so I wonder if that tripped him up, or what do you think happened?
I wanted to speak to that because conventional wisdom, we've been saying this for conventional wisdom, first of all, would have put Cohen earlier, so that wouldn't be the juror's last memory. And certainly it would have said you tick off his problems somewhere in the middle. Instead, they made it a kind of morality play.
Correct, a journey.
And at the very end, they went through, and with this not maudlin, not overstated, I regret that I bullied, I regret that I lied, I regret that the American people didn't have information because of me. It was really effective. They actually ended with the worst part, but showed him as not a redeemed man, but a contrite one. And the jury, without a doubt, was more focused during that final 45 minutes than they were any time in the trial. And therefore, when Blanche got up and couldn't get rhythm, and the contrast was very distinct.
I guess, just to say, I think the prosecution was very smart in sort of laying out the redemption arc for Michael Cohen for the last week and a half. I mean, he was on trial before he even took the stand. And everyone had talked last week about what a terrible guy Michael Cohen was. So literally, when Michael Cohen came in on Monday and again today, he didn't have to do that much to redeem himself. And so he did have the sort of mea culpa, fall on the sword, be contrite, and then we could move on because it had already been pre-butted. We knew he was kind of a dirty, filthy guy going into it, and the prosecution let that come out first. And more importantly, the prosecution has said all along, Michael Cohen's not the star here. The documents are the star. Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, all these other people, they're merely icing to corroborate the documents, and the documents are the case. That's the meat of their case.